Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I see the mayor is here. Thanks for coming. I've got a little bit to say here, and it's mostly wonderful news, and I couldn't be prouder to share it. So I want to thank the council members for coming and all of the citizens of Columbia, and it's just my honor to present to you my 6th State of the City message. I am profoundly moved to tell you we're making excellent progress in many areas of the strategic plan. We're moving steadily towards that Columbia that truly is the best place for everyone to live, work, learn, and play. So about a year and a half ago, we gathered together right here in this room, and we heard about the City Council's bold new strategic plan. It's an ambitious plan. It's focused on doing what we can to ensure that everyone who calls Columbia home has an equal shot at a good life, that all of us have the opportunity to thrive. And many of you here today were here then, and you may remember the call to look around us. It was a recognition that the city government would not be able to achieve the goals of the City Council without help from you, our partners. So the public schools, Moberly Area Community College, Job Point, Central Missouri Community Action are a few examples of the partners we are so blessed to work with. We rely on one another. We're in this together. And as the schools say, we are one. So it's my joy to tell you that we, all of us, have accomplished something truly remarkable. We've begun to close the employment gap between white and black Colombians. The American Community Survey measures unemployment by race, and they've been measuring it since about 2005. The gap is now the smallest we've ever seen. That's a big change. So when the City Council established the strategic plan, African American unemployment was 15.5% in Columbia. Today, it's 11.9%. We still have work to do, but we are gaining on our goal. So I highlight this first, you can see it behind me, because we've come to understand that jobs are social equity. Jobs are social equity. Because more African Americans are working, poverty in this demographic is going down. I am proud to work with Mayor Treese, Clyde Ruffin, Michael Trapp, Carl Scala, Ian Thomas, Matt Pitzer, and Betsy Peters, and 1,400 other men and women who work for the city and have devoted their lives to this work. The work isn't easy. There's a political price paid by the council, exacted by a handful of passionate critics, whom the press repeatedly quotes, for daring to incentivize firms like Aurora Organic Dairy, who, by expanding their business in Columbia, will employ over 140 Colombians. Over the past few years, the Economic Development Department, who are here today, and the City Council have helped to create or retain over 1,000 jobs in companies like Dana, Kraft, Northwest Medical Isotopes, and Aurora Organic Dairy. The council does this because jobs are social equity. It's the only path out of poverty. The only path is a good job that pays a living wage. So thank you to Job Point. You'll see a lot of folks here today from Job Point. And to Central Missouri Community Action and so many other nonprofits who work on this problem every day, the struggle against poverty. Now, some of you are thinking, you can't get a good job without a good education. And you're right. After we recovered from the surprise of our early success here, we couldn't help but wonder, how'd we do that? What happened? Well, obviously jobs, we know that. But how did we, all of us in this room, manage, for the first time in memory, to get the jobs we created to the people who actually needed them? Well, after a lot of research, I think we have the answer. We did it together. right? And here is the other motive force. Here's the other thing we did that helped our community begin to claw its way out of poverty. The Columbia Public Schools graduation rate. Look at that. 13% increase in 5 years in the number of African American students graduating compared to 2011. The one thing we know for sure is that a high school graduate has a good chance, if they grab it, of living a life of meaning, out of poverty. Without a high school diploma, you're very nearly guaranteed a life sentence of poverty. This is critically important, and we as a community owe a debt of gratitude to the school board, our teachers, our staff, and Superintendent Peter Stiepleman for helping our kids achieve this. So you can probably guess that I couldn't help but ask more questions, right? I asked, how did they do that, right? Now we've traced this path of data to fascinating results. So how did they do that? Well, to answer that, I'm breaking with tradition, and I'm inviting our Superintendent Peter Stiepleman to share a video message. He couldn't make it today. To answer that question, how did they increase African American graduation rates by 13% in just 5 years?
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about the great things that are happening in our school district. But before we talk about graduation rates, I just want to first welcome you here to Douglas High School. A big reason for our graduation increases has a lot to do with Dr. Neville and her staff. And this is a great building that's been closed for about a year, and it's an iconic structure in our community, and I hope that you all come out to our ribbon cutting in just about a couple of months, about August. So also before we talk about graduation rates, I want to kind of go back to where we were a year ago with the State of the City address. There's a slide there that has really stuck out to me for quite some time. One of the things that I noticed was we looked at the percentage of citizens who believe that they can thrive in Columbia. And what I found so dramatic that seemed very much in line with our own discrepancies when it comes to achievement is that 78% of our community, our white citizens, believe they can thrive in Columbia. And then you compare that to 54% of our black citizens. And I found that really interesting because when you start thinking about poverty and inequality, you start looking at how those discrepancies come about. We talk about homelessness, we talk about access to health care and affordable housing. We look at food insecurities and economic insecurities. And one of the things that we come to as a conclusion is that education is the key. And so yes, as you said in the lead up, that the 13% increase is tremendous. So if we look overall, we've seen a nice increase, 84.8% of our graduates in 2012, and then a graduation rate of 90% just this past year. So a really nice growth. And then when you disaggregate that and you start looking at between black and white, we see a nice increase among our white citizens, among our white seniors, but also among our black. So again, just like you said, 67.7% in 2012 and 81.3% last year. We're super proud of that. So you're asking, what are you doing that's different? But before we say what we're doing, it's important to note, why is it important to get a high school diploma? And so if you look at this slide, that was something that the city produced earlier this year at the homelessness conference. I wanted to note something that I thought was particularly interesting. The fact that is without a high school diploma, your annual earnings, the most that you can earn, is about $17,000. But the moment that you have a high school diploma, that goes up to about $24,000. You're getting closer to a living wage. So your question is, so what are the schools doing? Well, I think it's important to note that our goal is that all of our students are going to graduate college and career ready. And in order to do that, we focus on three things. We want to make sure that we are getting our kids to school, that we're keeping them in class, and that we're focused on catching them up. So what do we do when there's a student who's at risk of not graduating high school? We try different things. For one thing is we allow students to redo their work. We've had a major focus in our high schools and in our middle schools that when a child has an F, that we work hard to figure out what is it that that child needs to learn so that we can reduce the number of Fs. Because when you reduce the number of Fs, it means that a student doesn't have to make up the class again or redo it. Another thing that we do is that we use online coursework so that a kid can accelerate or make up for lost credit. And then the third thing is that when circumstances don't allow a child to be in the public school, so something has happened in that child's life, we find alternative locations for a child to be able to do that. We do this work together. So the basic thing is that we're committed to finding lots of different ways to make sure that our students have access to school so they can actually graduate high school. The bottom line is we're committed to this work, and we know you are too. So when we say we are one, it's not a gimmicky motto. It's actually something we believe. We believe we're in this together. So thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in your State of the City address. And the next time we're together, I know we'll see 100% of our citizens believe they can thrive in this community.
Well, thank you to Peter. We're all grateful for the outstanding work of the public schools. And Jan, thank you for coming. All right, if this amazing news makes your day like it does mine, wait, there's more. A little over a year ago, I asked Chief Burton to dedicate 3 officers to community policing in our 3 strategic plan neighborhoods. And the chief said no. I was stunned until he said, we're going to give you 6 officers. And in hindsight, that was a very good decision. Now, we've completed 1 year of neighborhood policing, neighborhood-based community policing. And the preliminary results are in. 7 out of 8 categories of crime that we care about the most are down. They have fallen by double digits. This is outside the standard deviation. It's not normal variation from year to year. Our strategic plan neighborhoods equate to about 4.5% of the geographic area of the city and just under 14% of the population of the city. Now, since we started community policing in these neighborhoods, they're responsible for half the drop in crime citywide. So in our 3 strategic plan neighborhoods, we experienced 846 fewer calls to 911. We saw a 38% reduction in shots fired, 24% reduction in rape, 53% reduction in robberies, 50% reduction in aggravated assault, 24% reduction in burglary, 14% reduction in larceny, and a 16% reduction in motor vehicle theft. Overall, if you add all of this together, we experienced a 30% drop in crime in 1 year in our strategic plan neighborhoods. This kind of work sends ripples throughout the city. When crime drops this far in one part of the city, it drops in all of the city. For example, look at aggravated assaults. In 1 year, aggravated assaults dropped by 117 citywide. 64 of those 117 fewer assaults didn't occur in our strategic plan neighborhoods, the neighborhoods with community policing. So another way to view this is that 14% of the city has seen 54% of the drop in assaults. So citywide, aggravated assaults fell by 27%. In the neighborhoods with community policing, they fell by 50%. So these results were produced by the dedicated work of Officers Heese, Anthony, Lenger, Parker, Rodriguez, and Schull, Sergeant Hester, and Lieutenant Jones. We owe them all a debt of gratitude. The nice thing is, I'm the boss and they're all here. So we get to show them how we feel. Well, that's the good news. Poverty's down, the crime rate's down. Unfortunately, there is also a fair bit of bad news to share with you. And if you watch the financial news, you're well aware of the increasing impact the internet is having on the nation's retail economy. Credit Suisse predicts that more than 8,600 brick-and-mortar stores are going to close this year. That's double the worst year of the Great Recession. That'll amount to the loss of 147 million square feet of retail space in the U.S. Sears Holdings stated to investors in March that it has substantial doubt that it can survive the year. In the first quarter of 2017, Amazon sales totaled $35.7 billion. That's billion with a B. That's up 22% over the first quarter last year. North American sales are up 21 billion. That's 23% over last year. So Amazon profit, that's revenue, profit surged in the first quarter. It's jumped 41% to 724 million. Now, why is that important? It's important because Colombia's economy is heavily dependent on the retail economy. In the last 20 years, Colombia has lost half of its manufacturing jobs, and we replaced them with retail jobs. Now, that has led to an increase in poverty, but at least it's a job. Now, even those will be vanishing at an increasing rate. We've already seen Macy's close, MC Sports is gone. Even stores in our beloved downtown have failed. All of the indicators I watch point to a very dark year for traditional retail and a very bright year for online retail. Now, on top of that, consider the struggles of Mizzou. Enrollment is down. The university is having to cut their budgets deeply because of that. Over the last 2 years, Mizzou's down nearly 2,400 students. This means 2,400 fewer shoppers. This means 2,400 fewer renters. This comes at a time when thousands of new student housing units are coming on the market. The student housing boom is over for now. Thank goodness we had a pause in that development. Interestingly, we're already seeing amazing reductions in rents being charged for student housing, the one good side effect of this problem. In addition to enrollment reductions, 300 jobs are being painfully eliminated at the university's campus, main Columbia campus, about half of which are vacant. So these problems will have a noticeable negative impact on Colombia's economy as a whole. And what do these big problems mean to city government? Well, we have and we will continue to have a serious revenue problem. We built our system, our whole system, on sales tax with no notion of an online, non-taxable world. Well, the world has changed. The federal government does not seem interested in ending this massive subsidy of Amazon. It continues to allow them to avoid sales taxes. We've made difficult choices to reduce our spending to match the revenue we receive. Last year, we made the decision to stop replacing our fleet. And we implemented a delay in hiring of 45 days. Now, let me segue here. The fleet is not a simple decision, right? And I think of police officers. We use those cars heavily, far more than any of us use our normal car, right? Some of those cars get what we call hot-seated. The seat doesn't cool off before the next driver gets in, right? We can't do this for too many years. So we also have a delay in hiring of 45 days for all general fund departments other than police and fire. We continued those approaches into the current year, and we're going to have to continue them into the future. We trimmed spending everywhere we could. You know, we haven't paid for paper clips in a long time. It's funny, you get a lot of those anyway, right? People send them to you. But we haven't bought other office supplies. We will be forced to continue all of these techniques, and we're going to have other budget cuts as well. So unfortunately, these alone will not make up for the growing loss of revenue. The draft budget I will deliver to City Council in July will balance, but it will not balance easily. It will include other budget cuts in addition to those I've just mentioned. So I'm here to tell you the growth of the internet is going to continue. It's not going to decrease. And we're going to have thousands fewer shoppers on top of that. So the city government has a severe revenue problem. In many ways, the job of city manager is to be the steward of the city government. And stewardship is defined as the protection of something considered worth caring about, worth preserving. So as a steward of the city government, I recommend 3 actions to begin to change our fate. The first one is this: until the federal government and state government end the massive subsidy of online retailers, we must recognize that the only action within our power to address our shrinking revenue is to move away from sales tax as a funding source. We should look to property tax for future ballots, for public safety and roads. Secondly, we need not labor in darkness. We should conduct a study of our retail economy. What parts of our economy compete well with the internet? What products do we as shoppers leave Columbia to go buy? And what could our commercial landlords do with that information? Finally and thirdly, I recommend that we collaborate with Boone County to place a use tax on the ballot at the same time. This tax will not have a significant impact in the short term, but if the federal and state governments phase out the massive subsidy of online retailers, you're going to remember 2 phrases today: jobs are social equity and massive subsidy of online retailers. If they phase that out, we would be positioned to receive the sales tax from internet purchases. So we'd be prepared. It's not really much of an increase on any current transactions. So we're looking at some pretty Spartan years ahead. We will not be able to do everything we had hoped to do. Things are going to take longer. And we will have to change how we have always done things if we want to thrive as an organization dedicated to public service. Now, that said, we still have capacity to make a difference where it matters. And I'm going to leave you with a story. It's a true story, although it's going to sound like a movie script. Officer Justin Anthony is assigned to the Central neighborhood, where he connects with kids while fulfilling his role as a guardian of the neighborhood, one of our community police officers. In his words, at first some of them were leery of being with me, with a police officer and all, but we'd shoot hoops together and eventually they'd come around. Justin built a team of 9th and 10th grade boys from all the strategic neighborhoods, and they did more than come around. They created a team. They played in the Columbia Youth Basketball League, and they were sponsored by the Downtown Optimist Club. Now, I'm going to show you another video clip. When it begins, I'm going to set it up a little bit. They hadn't lost a game all season. The score is 59-58. We're down. Our team's down by a point. With 6.1 seconds on the clock, the other team has a free throw. So Justin's team, our team, is in blue. So watch what happens.
Let's go, Ace. Oh my God.
That's the power of community policing. By the way, the team's back together for a new season. So thank you, Officer Anthony. And we're so proud to have the Columbia Police Department basketball team members with us this morning. Stand up, guys, and take a round of applause. So I'll read your name and raise your hand when you hear it. Jequan Jennings, Marquez Lawthorne, Daylon McLaurin, Jaylon Parker, Gerard Taylor, D'Angelo Washington. Well done, guys. We're proud of you. So from the government's perspective, the city government's perspective, we're looking at some lean years ahead. Even though that will come, your city government employees will continue to work on the council's strategic plan. We're going to make a difference where it matters. So thank you all for coming today. And to our many partners in the room, I want to thank you for helping us achieve these outcomes and to make our little corner of the world a little better place for everyone. So with that, that's my speech. I would like to take 10 or 15 minutes and answer any questions you might have. And while you think of one, thank you.
Okay, Mike, I ask you this every year on a scale of 1 to 10.
I was going to be
how would you rate our
disappointed.
city right now?
That's a tricky question. The city is a 10. The economy is definitely lower than 5 right now, so it's going to make accomplishing what we want to do very hard. But we live in a beautiful place with wonderful people, so it's a great city, obviously. We all feel that way, right? Yes.
Do you think these drops that you're seeing in crime in the strategic neighborhoods are going to be sustainable?
I believe so. We're going to sustain the community policing effort, so I have no reason to think they'll go up.
Try to get more people in the community outreach unit to pursue this model. I mean, you see these numbers ended with this really great story about what community policing does. Why not move more officers into this unit, into this front?
That's an excellent idea. It's all about the dollars, and we have these competing demands, right? So first thing we have to do is answer the call of 911. That's a lot of volume. But you look at what community policing does, it slows down that volume, right? The whirlwind slows down when we have community policing. There's 2,000 fewer calls to 911 last year, right? And almost half of those from the 14% of the population, right? So it has that amazing impact. And so if we invest in community policing, we know the call volume will drop in 911. Now that said, we can't afford to do much. We spend 2 out of 3 discretionary dollars today on police and fire and the courts. So there's not a lot of room left to expand that in any significant way. If we're going to do that, it really, in my opinion, will take a property tax ballot. Now, the council has unanimously supported an effort to engage the community in a process over the coming year to decide exactly what kind of policing we want to recommend for that ballot. So what kind of community policing are we talking about? There's at least 10 models that work very well. We are using 3 models of community policing already. So we have the school resource officers, that's a community policing model. Where you have the downtown unit, that's a community policing model. And then we have our community outreach unit for the strategic plan, which is the most traditional model, but it works really well. There's a reason it's traditional. It's tried and true and it works.
And you say because you're not collecting as much sales tax that it needs to probably be from property tax. I mean, 3 years ago, we got about 60% of the voters rejected doing that, pretty much for that reason. So why do you think another effort would be, why continue to pursue that if you just 3 years ago were told no?
There was a lot of reasons that failed, I believe. It wasn't simply because it was a property tax. We did a survey last year and asked survey respondents what they would prefer, and now times have changed. They prefer a sales tax approach. I think most people understand sales tax is not a horse that's going to get us across the finish line. And you know, cops are funny. They like to get paid next year too, right? So we can't use a funding source that's going to evaporate every year. Yes, sir.
Given the effects of the education industry that's in this town, going south, what efforts are being made to attract industry that's not related to the educational?
Great question. That's almost the entire focus of our economic development department. And most of their work, and Bernie and Stacy are there, raise your hands. Thanks for coming today. They've had some tremendous successes, and we have good partners in trying to, when companies call us and say, well, we're thinking of expanding, we'd like to come there, we engage immediately and we start talking about why the benefits are so great in Columbia for them to come. So our focus is on the type of jobs that maybe don't require a PhD. Now, we've certainly done our best to get those jobs too. When you think of Northwest Medical Isotopes, there's not a ton of jobs. There are some where you don't need an advanced degree. But the dairy is a great example. You know, you do need a high school diploma, but that's a great job if you have one. So we're going to continue to focus on jobs. That's kind of the city's niche. That's where we can add value to this complicated puzzle of combating poverty. We can do that part. We have help from the county. Thank you. By the way, commissioners are here. I see Fred Perry and I think Janet Thompson's in the back. Thank you for coming and thank you for all your help. That dairy is amazing, and I know it's not easy to do that. You take as much political fallout as our council does, so thank you for your strong partnership on that.
I have another question this time about the airport. Could you maybe update us on where we're at with that as far as progress out there, as well as where are we doing with the airport manager situation?
Well, let me start with the manager. He's here. There you are. Raise your hand. So we've made that decision. Mr. Parks is going to be full-time, so we're very pleased by that. So congratulate him when you're done if you haven't. So he's doing a great job. He's got all the talent in the world, and we couldn't be happier. In terms of the airport itself, it's quite a challenge to double the amount of seats available in an airport in 1 year, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a direct flight to Denver and 2 more to Chicago. So we're really pleased by the response in the market. Those are selling very fast. I have great hopes for both of those services. And the big struggle now is to make sure we have enough parking spaces. So if you've been out there, you've noticed there's more gravel being spread, and you know, we do things on the cheap when we can, and a gravel parking lot's one of those. So we're going to add a couple more pads of parking too. So that's our big struggle now, is to have enough parking space.
Continued free parking as well?
I love free parking. It's a competitive advantage for us, and we'll have it as long as we can. Yes, ma'am.
I've heard that Columbia tends to lose out often when we're competing against other cities for bringing in new companies. Do they know what the factors are that contribute to that?
Yeah, we do. We ask them when they choose to go somewhere else, and fundamentally, we just don't incentivize companies. We have one tool, and we have to get very creative. So other cities have 10 tools in the toolbox. And it's frustrating for me as a city manager, because when they come to town, often they have a deal that's been offered by, I don't know, let's just say Moberly or Sedalia, and we can't touch it with our one tool. So we have to get very creative, and Bernie and Stacy have done amazing jobs getting creative. And so our successes are in spite of the fact that we don't allow ourselves to use all the tools that are out there. Now, that's okay. That's a decision our community has made, right? So we respect that decision, not to incentivize companies. And, you know, we've done well, right? We've ridden this terrific wave of companies come anyway, right? And people often who are opposed to incentives think that, well, they're going to come anyway. You don't have to incentivize them. I can tell you of the companies we've incentivized, they would not be here without that. They would be in Moberly or Sedalia. So we do lose out. There are companies who've chosen not to come because of that, and that's the reason. I do want to point out a few other VIPs in the room and thank them for coming. So Job Point, can I have everyone from Job Point just stand up? Steve Smith and the board and all the students. You do awesome work, and we partner with them across the board. They help us find employees. We send folks to them. And it's just a great partnership. So thank you for what you do. And I know CMCA is here. I saw Angela. Darren's back there. And you hit from left and right, right? You're the school board and the CMCA, so baseball metaphor, sorry. So thank you for everything you do. I've told that story. You know, Angela helped wake us up to the problem of poverty, so we wouldn't be here today without CMCA, so thank you for that work. And I see Megan Corbin and I think Misty Larkins and Emily Young, Anthony Nichols are all here too, right? Raise your hand and get an applause. Thank you for what you do. And I would be foolish not to recognize the real heroes in the room, to me, the City Council. They are the ones who really stuck their neck out on this plan. We've never done this before. There's plenty of criticism, but social equity is not easy, and it's not easy to talk about in a political environment. So, Mayor Treese, I see you there. Thank you for coming. I see Ian Thomas. Ian, would you wave? Thank you. And I know Clyde Ruffin is here. Did I miss any council members? Great. Well, thank you. Are there any other questions? All right.
This is about the police department. It's been in the news a lot where there's a group trying to remove the police chief. Do you have any concerns about the administration over there and where the police department's going now?
Well, we're not finished working on the problem of disproportionate minority contact on the AG's report. So we started mid-year last year to address that problem. And we've done a large listening tour. We've gone to every group that has an interest in it. We've hosted meetings for anyone else that has an interest that wasn't in those groups. We have one more of those meetings to do, and we're very grateful to the NAACP. They're going to host it and organize it. We'll attend and listen. We have learned a lot in a year. We have a tremendous amount of information to sift through. Once we have that meeting, we will produce a report that we will send to council with everything we've learned, everything we've heard, and recommendations for change that we think may drive down the disparate contact. The department's already made changes to do what they can to make the traffic stop experience a more positive one. It's good to remember, too, that 90% of all stops result in a warning. I think sometimes we forget that. And it's our folks making the stop saying, hey, your light's busted, you better get that fixed, right? Now go ahead and have a good day. Now, getting stopped is still, I have to admit, I got stopped the other weekend. I was going a little fast. The sheriff's deputy was not in our county, different county. I still have that reaction. I'm the city manager, for God's sake, right? I shouldn't, you know, but it's just that human nature. You see the lights and your heart goes a little faster. Oh my God, what do I do? In my case, it was simple. It was, oh, I'm speeding. But so I love that they're trying to make that less tense, less stressful, but the real question we have now is how do we have fewer interactions overall? So that's a difficult question, and we're going to have that report in a couple of months.
Days since this year's version of the report came out, and we've yet to hear a statement from the police department on that. Why the delay, and should we expect something to be said from the department on this?
You'll see something today. There's a press release.
Is there any reason for a delay in this? I mean, as you mentioned, you spent all year sort of on this topic.
Right. Yeah, we do. You know, the only answer we have is we're pretty busy. And, you know, there's not a lot of downtime over there to focus on, you know, frankly, a lot of press calls are about so-and-so said something, and what do you think about that? Well, it's a fair conversation to have, but we prioritize our work, and so it's just that we've been very busy. We will have it out today, and it will say very similar things to what I just said. We're not ignoring it. We're still in the process of reacting to what we've learned, and then I believe we will have a recommendation that will lower those numbers. So you'll get something today. Any other questions? Comments? Yes, sir, in the back.
Can you explain why out of the $2.2 million budget surplus this year that not one penny went to public safety?
Well, we're in the budget process. So to say not one penny went to public safety, not one penny's gone to anything right now, right? So in July, we'll deliver the budget. We'll have recommendations about where that will be spent. I will tell you that the largest chunk of it will stay in the police department. They produced the savings, and it's going to stay there. So I forget, it's over $500,000 right there, right? So, you know, saying that it's not been spent, it's early. We haven't made any decisions about it. Well, okay. We're not going to stay here all day waiting for questions. So thank you all very much, and thank you so much to the basketball team and to the COU unit. Thank you.